Signal Sciences secures the most important web applications, APIs, and microservices of the world's leading companies, protecting over 7,500 applications and 150 billion production requests per week. Signal Sciences Next-Gen WAF and RASP help companies increase security and maintain site reliability without sacrificing velocity, all at the lowest total cost of ownership. Signal Sciences' patented technology protects any application against any attack, with integrations into any DevOps toolchain. Signal Sciences. Demand more from your WAF. Learn more at signalsciences.com/PSW. Introducing the new DigiCert. As the leading provider of high-assurance SSL, TLS, and PKI certificates, DigiCert is all about improving security across the web and IoT. DigiCert is committed to helping customers and partners successfully deploy identity, authentication, and encryption solutions. They'll even help you figure out which certificate you need to secure your web domains, apps, devices, and more. Check out the Cert Wizard tool under the SSL tab on digicert.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Quick announcement, make sure you check out our on-demand material, securityweekly.com/on-demand. You can go there and get a whole bunch of webcasts completely free. All you can do is register and consume some great content from hand-selected vendors with hand-selected topics. It's awesome. Make sure you go do that. I would then now like to introduce Mr. Chris Brenton, no stranger to the show. He is currently the Chief Operating Officer even of Active Countermeasures. But don't let that fool you, because Chris is a true packet ninja. Even had me as a student in class where he taught firewalls to me. So Chris is my teacher. So when he writes posts, I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense now. Mr. Chris Brenton is here.
Dude, awesome to see you.
Good to see you as well.
How's it going?
Good. I see you're getting into the Floridian life, former New Englander, transplanted into Florida.
Yeah, I went from like New Hampshire to tanned.
Yeah,
so
yeah, you are very
complain.
tanned. You're like more tanned than ever. I guess that's the Florida thing, huh? You get to actually go outdoors all year round.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't blame the radiation off the monitors for this much.
Right. That's awesome. So Chris, I did some digging before. We were about to do this segment. About a year ago, John did a technical segment on RITA, on Enterprise Security Weekly. I decided not to rerun that because it was a year ago. I don't know in a year's time how much has changed with RITA, or if I think the feature sets are pretty much the same, right?
So right now, yes. Although it's funny, we just had a meeting about it today where there's a bunch of stuff we're adding in along with speed improvements. We're getting more folks that are trying to use it in large enterprise. So yeah, when you've got a couple of terabytes worth of packet captures that you need to go through and process, having that take a couple of hours versus 20 minutes is a big deal.
Yep.
So we've been investing a lot more time in optimizing the speed.
That's awesome. I mean, a couple of terabytes worth of raw packet logs is like heaven for us packet nerds. You can find a lot of stuff in there. That's just at university. I probably had pretty close to a terabyte. That's pretty awesome. I didn't have the tools that we have today, though. That's the problem.
And it was all porn.
Yeah, that's true.
Probably.
Porn.
So, Chris, I didn't know where you wanted to showcase some of the threat hunting techniques, talk about it in general. I know that you've had some great blog posts on active countermeasures that are using T-Shark and Wireshark and other open source tools to do some of the pieces of what commercially available and larger threat hunting platforms provide, which I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, if it's cool with you, I wanted to hit a few slides and then actually show some RITA. I wanted to kind of focus on an aspect of it that I feel doesn't get enough attention.
Okay,
so,
awesome, perfect.
If that works for you.
Let's do it.
All right. Gee, that means you'll have to let me show you let you see my screen.
Yep.
Let me make sure I get the stuff hidden I need to.
Careful with that. We almost had an incident earlier on my screen, which gets shared with all potential clients.
Oops. Hey, when that happens.
So I'll make the slides available in case anybody wants them. First one is kind of the obligatory. If you're going to show this to your boss, they're going to need to see it. We all know this. People are getting broken into left and right, and there's a lot of money at stake here. Threat hunting is kind of this. When you look at every other technology we're
Chris?
trying to apply to. Yes.
Hey, sorry, could you just go into presentation mode, please?
Oh, I'm not in presentation mode? Sorry.
It's all right.
Okay, sorry, don't use Zoom enough. Where's presentation mode?
If you're in a Google Slides, you can go to View Present.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, there you go.
Better?
Yes,
There it is.
thank you.
There it is.
Hey, now you can see it. Awesome. So yeah, when you look at the technologies we've been using for years, everything's defensive, except for forensics. But I'll come back to that one. But, when you look at firewalling, when you look at intrusion detection, antivirus, even incident handling, it's all kind of that protection based. It's we're going to do this to keep the bad guys out and hope they never get in. And if they do, oops, we can't really tell. If you think about it, we've had a step missing for a while because it's been keep them out. Oh, wait, they got in. Oh, my God, let's freak out and go into a forensics mode. We didn't have anything to kind of bridge that gap to kind of figure out. We put our defenses in place. Let's double check to make sure they're working the way they expect them to. Once we find something, rather than somebody else on the internet drops us an email and says, hey, one of your systems is trying to attack us, we find it ourselves, and now we can go into forensics mode. It's a lot more of a controlled situation. So that's really where threat hunting's come from, and that's why this is just becoming so popular right now, because you really don't know what's going on in your network until you view it. It frightens me how often I'll talk to people with a C in their title about, how secure is your network? And the feedback I get is, well, we're not finding compromised systems, so we're okay. And then when you probe and say, well, so what are you doing to look for them? Oh, we check logs. I mean, that's kind of the default answer, right? We check logs. Oh, yeah, we'll look at a log. We look at the logs. There's only one set of logs we all look at, and that all works. Just to back up for a second, one of the things I think we are starting to see now that threat hunting is becoming so popular is scope creep, meaning that talking to a lot of folks that are doing threat hunts that are saying, oh, my God, I'm burnt out. There's just not enough time to go through everything. And when you talk to them about what they're doing, they're transitioning from threat hunting mode to forensics mode, and they're not really paying attention to that transition. And there's a couple of things that can go wrong there. We can blow our incident handling out of the water, and we can go in and taint our forensics trail so that we really can never get back to this point we were at when the attacker broke in the first place. So I do have a blog post on that. Rather than going too much deeper into it, and I'll bring my soapbox down a little bit, you can go read that. So why threat hunting? Like I said, this is our final layer. Without this, we're kind of hosed. And one of the things we need to be doing is checking our network for beacons, meaning that, the days of an attacker directly connecting to the system that they compromised are gone. Everybody has firewalls now. So they need to get inventive. They need to find another way through. So typically today, I think still, I'd have to look at the metrics, but I think still the most popular way is phishing. Let me get you to open an email, click a link, do something that you didn't intend to do in order to get you to execute code on your machine, and now I own your machine. There's a firewall in the way, so rather than being able to connect to it directly, I got to come up with another solution. And I think most of us know this one. So now this compromised system will connect out to a command and control server that's kind of an intermediary between the attacker themselves and this compromised system. And they'll go into some timing phase where they'll say, let me check to see if they have any command orders for me to do. If not, I'll come back a minute later, or I'll come back 10 minutes later, or whatever the case may be. Excuse me. The attacker will queue up something on that server that's their next set of marching orders. So imagine I've got malware installed and it's calling home every 10 minutes. I'll send my marching orders up to that command and control server. The next time that box checks in, it goes off and it does whatever you need it to. Now, RITA, the tool I'm going to talk about, looks for beacons. We have a couple of different algorithms we do, and we have a couple of different ways we go about doing it. And oh, by the way, RITA is free, open source. Please download it. Please try it. If there's something it's not doing for you, chris@activecountermeasures.com, let me know. We want to make this a really good tool for the community, because this to me is like a huge gaping hole where, to start solving this problem, a lot of us are looking at spending, dollar values that are six figures and higher. This is a free option to be able to go after this. So RITA will tag beacons, and I think John's come on the show to show this before. We have a couple of different things we go into looking for. One is kind of that repeating pattern. Is it calling home once per minute? But attackers have gotten crafty, so we have too. So one of the other things we'll look for is, are they introducing jitter into that session? In other words, as an attacker, an attacker might say, okay, rather than calling home every 10 minutes on the 10-minute mark exactly, which is a clear indication of something automated, do it plus or minus 2 minutes. And now the thought process from the attacker's perspective is, well, it no longer looks like a beacon because there's some variables in there, there's some jitter, so I'm less likely to get picked up. We've actually improved the math to be able to kind of catch that type of thing when it takes place, so we can catch those. We look at packet sizing, we can catch variations in that when padding takes place. So there's some good beacon detection capability. I highly recommend, we get videos up on the website. John's done a lot of cool stuff. I highly recommend you check that out. But the one I wanted to talk about specifically is DNS, because this is one that I'm seeing to start ramp up. And I think one of the biggest reasons for it is this is one of the hardest things to try and trap in your network in order to keep it from calling back to that command and control server. In other words, if I go to my firewall and I say, okay, I'm not going to do that brain dead policy of anybody internally can go out and do whatever they bloody well please. I'm actually going to have a sanity checked rule set and let out only what I need to. Even when you do that, this type of attack pattern can work against you. So to have tools to be able to go in and tag this when it takes place is a really good thing to have. And it's very similar to the last slide I showed you, where we had a compromised system calling home to a command and control server, and the attacker is just queuing up commands on that server telling it what to do. The difference here is we're using DNS. So what'll happen is system gets compromised. That system will do a DNS query, and I'll come back and talk about that in a little bit. I just want to run through the circle once, and then we'll come back. That system will do a query. It'll say, hey, I want to look up this particular host name. Well, we all know the next thing that happens is it goes to whatever the local resolver is, so probably a DNS server on the internal network, and it goes to that system and says, hey, look up this host name for me. If that host doesn't have it in cache, which in the case of an attacker, it never will, the next thing it does is it goes up to the root name servers and says, hey, who's authoritative for .com? Oh, let me go talk to them. Who's authoritative for evil.com? Okay, let me go talk to them. When your local resolver goes and talks to that evil.com DNS server, that DNS server is actually the command and control server. So where this gets funky is in the host names getting looked up. So I gave you an example up on the screen here. They're pretty easy to spot from a human perspective, meaning we would expect the name to be www or FTP or DNS or SMTP or some sort of descriptive name to us. As you can see, we've got a long string of numbers here. It can be letters. It doesn't matter. But it's this long convoluted string. The query will either be an A record query or a text record query. Text records are more frequent. That's more common. You do see A-level queries on occasion. So the host will say, hey, look up this long convoluted host name for me. Well, we go through that normal DNS process that I just talked about. The difference is what's answering on the other end is a command and control server. So when the command and control server sees our system looking up that host name, that tells that command and control server, that's the that's the compromised system that's located at this address, and the attacker has said execute this command set on it. So the text record or IP address that I hand back is going to be marching orders to tell it what to do. And that answer will come back. That local malware process will go through and look at the answer and say, oh, okay, it's telling me to grab all local spreadsheets. Let me go through and do that. And now DNS will either get turned into a exfiltration channel in order to be able to push things out that way, or it could, I've seen cases where it might use port 80 or TCP 443 to try and look like web or HTTPS traffic and push it out that way. If you see it on HTTPS, one of the things I've kind of seen consistently is there's no digital certificate negotiation. So if you go in and you look at it, it will look like it's encrypted. But there's no digital certificate at the beginning of the session. If you're seeing that on TCP 443, that's a real clue. Hey, something's going wrong here.
Hey, Chris, it was so much easier when attackers just used IRC as the command and control.
Yes.
It was so much. like so much easier to spot. And then, like, if there was no
Don't you miss those days?
I do, because like if there was no authentication on the IRC channel, you could just log in and like interact with all their bots, and sometimes they'd be in the room too, so you could chat with them and be like, "Hey, how's your botnet going?"
You know, Paul, it's kind of like the equivalent of setting the evil bit on attack traffic, right? You gotta set the most significant bit of the 6 offset of the IP header, right? And then everybody knows you're coming. It's fantastic.
Yeah, things have gotten a little more advanced.
It is amazing to me how many times I've actually seen attackers do that in the wild, feeling like I'm so good at what I do, I will fly under the radar. They won't notice I have the evil bit set.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but so the contrast to all of that, Paul, is that if they did just stay using IRC, you and I get bored, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Like, oh yeah, we did this 5 years ago. Then you would just say, yeah, no, we're not going to have Chris back on. We're just going to run a show from 5 years ago to cover that same topic, and you'll be okay.
Right.
So this keeps it interesting, keeps us off the streets and out of trouble. So we're using DNS. So now think of this from like a firewalling perspective, or even if you're going to go in and try and do, I love the term deep packet inspection. It always sounds so dirty. But you're going to go in and try and actually take a control on content. This is all valid DNS headers going back and forth. This is all valid DNS type of traffic. As a human, we could look at this and see it, but I don't think any of us want in our job description, views all DNS queries every day to look for repeating patterns. I mean, that's just going to make our life miserable. So we need a better way to go about doing this. Now, one option is you can turn on DNS query logging within your DNS resolver, log all of this stuff, go through, sort it, pick your Unix command, cut, paste tools of choice to kind of organize this data out and be able to go in and look at it that way. Or you can pull in a tool like RITA, which I'm going to go through and show you now. So, and this is just, so I had to kind of throw this in here, Paul. I've been in a lot of Reddit channels and other spots where you say, oh yeah, we're going in and we're looking for this type of activity, and inevitably somebody always bubbles up and says, oh, I know exactly how to get around your detection. I'm going to introduce a random variable that will only have it beacon once every 5 days. Yeah, okay, wait a minute. If you're beaconing once every 5 days, you effectively have an almost not useful compromised system, right? If you're lucky, you're waiting 10 days to get answers back.
I like how we tested the ideas on Reddit. Like, we let Reddit troll our ideas. That was like part of our product testing, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because us, we love feedback. But at the same time, let's focus on solving the problem, not feeling better about ourselves because we can try and find one way to try and kill the whole thing. So as long as the system hasn't killed me yet, which it hasn't, awesome. You should be looking at my SSH session. Yay. And what you're looking at is just the command line options that are available with RITA. There's a lot of cool stuff here. I highly recommend folks come in, play around with this. We got a ton of videos on how to use it. Again, it's open source, it's free, grab it, use it, it's awesome. We use Bro as a front end. So what's kind of cool about that is if you start digging through the data that RITA is producing and you want even more detail about what's going on, it's Bro. So we just have Bro run in the front. We have Bro rotate its logs every 2 hours. RITA takes that, pulls it in. Once it has about 24 hours worth of data, RITA will go in and do an analysis, although you can kick this off manually anytime you need to. And RITA will give you a ton of results, and it looks at things like, is there anything indicative of beacon type traffic on the network? It looks for the converse of that, which is, do I have any long sessions taking place, long connections? That one is a fun one for me when we're dealing with customers, because you don't see malware using it that often. If you think about it, if I'm trying to build this huge 100,000 plus system botnet army, I can't have them all holding a connection open to my command and control server all day. I'll kill the server, which, we would enjoy, but that doesn't work for them. However, if I've been hired to go after a site, or if I'm like nation state level, I'm only trying to compromise 5 or 6 internal systems maximum anyway, because usually once I get 5 or 6, I can get access to any place in the network I want to go to.
Thank you.
All right, if I'm only going after, so if I'm going after 5 or 6, I can definitely, keep the connection open persistently, and now I won't show up as a beacon. Well, RITA will go in and it'll tag that too. But what's fun about this is this will catch all of your engineers, and yes, I'm picking on engineers for a reason, This will catch all of your engineers that says, I don't care if the corporate policy is I can't cruise porn during working hours. I'm going to set up a proxy server on my home system back on my Comcast network, create an SSH tunnel out, and haha, you can't catch me. Well, now you can. You can go in with RITA and you can say, show me all of the persistent connections that are lasting more than like 5 hours, and it's amazing what jumps out at you.
Well, and what's interesting about that, Chris, is you can also cross-reference how much data was transferred in that connection. So if it's someone like me, I SSH'd into a server and forgot about that window, like, and the connection stayed open, but there's not a lot of data passing forward. However, if I'm proxying all my web traffic over it and watching porn, that's going to generate a lot of traffic.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you can also look at how much data is coming in versus out, which is also going to tell you, is this somebody possibly exfiltrating data, or is this somebody cruising porn with a lot of video, and that's going to be the data coming in versus going out. So yeah, you can definitely pull out a lot of cool stuff there. There's a bunch of other things here. Again, we got a ton of videos, but the one I wanted to go through and kind of talk about is the exploded DNS test view, the exploded DNS view. So the way RITA works is, like I said, every 2 hours, Bro will rotate its logs. RITA will pull that in, and now there's a database you can go in and you can take a look at. I can go in, I can pull in any of these tools to analyze it. I can script this and then output the text information to someplace else if I want to, so I don't even have to do it manually. There's a lot of cool things you can do. But what we've done with RITA is we've gone in and we've said, okay, let's watch all the queries going by. Let's watch the responses that come back in. And let's start tagging that information and keeping track of things like how many unique hosts are we seeing within a domain? Because remember I said, as that system is calling home, it's going to have a long convoluted name, but it's going to change it as it goes along. So that's going to result in a lot of host names that exist in a domain that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
So if you Chris, take a look at when I look at that, what jumps out at me is why a garnish has its own domain name.
Yes.
How does that happen? I think it's a fish, so I'm definitely not going there, but I'm just saying parsley.com for those listening is on the list, and it could be a spice, but it's mostly a garnish.
Or it's a language parser. But
yes, true. Yes. Thank you, Doug. That's exactly what it is. Sorry.
Yep. Hey, Paul, for all we know, somebody's built an entire business model around parsley.
It could be. Could be.
There's all kinds of parsley, like cilantro and Chinese parsley, and there's all kinds of stuff. It can get really complicated.
No, way off on it. Sorry, back to you.
You started. He made me do it.
It's bad enough when we go off on rum deviations, but this has to be a first going off on a parsley deviation.
Yes,
you heard it here first, folks.
That's part of the algorithm.
Okay.
It looks for parsley deviations.
Come back in. We only got a little bit more to cover about. So, so if we take a look at that second line, that's telling us .com, there was 65,000, a little more than 65,000 unique, fully qualified domain names found there, 209,000 queries. Well, this makes sense, right? .com is the most popular top-level domain. I expect that to be at the top of the list. But then after that, I expect to see maybe .net, .org, maybe .uk, .ca. I'll start getting into country-level domains after that, .us. So there's kind of an expected order to what's going to be hosting the maximum number of systems. But quite honestly, you can go through and you can parse that stuff out. Top-level domains aren't as interesting to me. We included it because some people like having those metrics. What's interesting to me is the next level after that. The next level after that is if you stop and think about what domains would I expect to have the most number of hosts that people might be connecting to? Some obvious names jump out at you, right? Amazon AWS, Microsoft are good ones. They're hosting public clouds. DigitalOcean is another good example there. So I would not be surprised to see there's 200 different hosts within Amazon AWS that my system's going in and doing a lookup on, especially if I'm using that as a public cloud provider. Mm-hmm. Where things get weird, Akamai is another good one. They're a CDN for most major companies. Where things get weird is if you look at the third line down, we have a domain named r-1x.com that there is 63,000 hosts that exist inside of that have been queried by some of my local internal systems. Wait a minute, that makes no sense, right? Here's a domain I've never heard of before. Why is this showing up there? One of the things that's coming down the pipe is we're going to integrate DNS aging into this. So if that domain is 7 days old or less, you're going to get a flag on it. because
Nice.
as I think most of us know, that's important because attackers can go through register a domain, and per ICANN rules, after 7 days, they can say, nah, change my mind. I've polluted that domain to the point where nobody can use it. Give me this other domain now, and for $50, they can just rotate through different domain names all year long and not have a problem with that. So that 7 day time period is kind of critical to me. We're actually going to go in and we're going to start flagging that.
Yeah, Chris, and I didn't realize that the 7 days was like because of that. I thought you just picked 7 days because that was what you observed in the wild, but it's because they can re-register the or switch it out for something else.
Yeah. So in a previous life, I used to work for this company called Dime.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You might have heard of them. They brought down the internet.
And now, wait, Chris, were you? And I'm not saying it was your fault, but you were
that.
there. You were there when that happened, right? Were you working there?
I was there. I was there when it happened. Yes, I was definitely. Oh God, was I there when it happened?
Okay,
yes.
I bet
that was a very tough day.
Life. Yeah.
But one of the things that Dine offered was domain registration services, and when I came on board, there was no control over how those domain name registrations were done. I created the first abuse team, pulled them under my control, and one of the first things I had them go after was go in and look at the accounts. Anyone who's registered a domain and given it back after 7 days and they've done it more than twice, kill them. Mm-hmm. Find out what IP address they're coming from. Ban that IP. Never let them come back again. Because, yeah, folks will just do it over and over again. And when I first came in, there were folks that had been customers for literally over a year that had been doing that you register a domain, pollute it with spam or whatever else, and then just change the domain to something else.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill Stearns, we both know him.
Yep.
Very smart guy, very cool. Bill has a very scary, huge data set that I'm trying to get him to make community accessible. And one of the things it keeps track of is how old is this domain? Is it less than 7 days old? Just so you can go in and flag things like that as we're talking about. So that we're going to introduce as a feature with RITA, which again is free. It's open source. Go ahead and grab it. It's not going to cost you any money. And that will go through and kind of flag these young domains, help them rise to the top, get you to pay more attention to them. So, but as we scroll through this list, you can see as we go down, it starts making more sense, well, except for parsley.com.
Parsley's okay.
Doug's a fan.
Parsley's okay? Good to know. Good to know. So the Black Hills folks are kind enough to generate a lot of these data sets for us. And I think sometimes they do stuff like this just to mess with us. Like let's throw in parsley.com just to see if the ACM folks even notice it. And if they do, I'm sure that's going to be a WTF moment,
That's awesome.
So again, back to the data. So as we go through this, you can see as we go through the domains, it makes sense. Yahoo's down by the bottom. They don't get as much traffic as they used to. They don't have as many hosts. But as you scroll through this data, we then start getting into the actual fully qualified domain names that folks were connecting to. And, at the top of the screen, you can see I have a bunch of them here. So you can see I've got an internal system that's going out querying different domain names on a regular basis. How often I could go in and kind of dig through the beacon data to be able to find that. But what's important to me here is, hey, I see it here. I can now go back and start trying to track that system down. But this is a clear indication you have an internally compromised system that's using DNS as a covert communication channel. Whatever sets off the flashing red light within your environment, that needs to go off now.
Now, Chris, many of us can look at that data and just go, oh, like that's the anomaly, right? And I think that's one of the differences between the open source and the commercial tool, right? Is even in the open source one, you still got to kind of know what you're looking at, right?
Yeah, so yes, if you see something at the top of that list, you can infer if it's something I don't recognize, I need to worry about it. Now, why do I need to worry about it? Yeah, it's an open source tool. There's documentation, but it kind of helps you get going and not a whole lot beyond that. The commercial offering does actually go through and look at this and drill down and give you better information on what's going on.
That's awesome.
But that costs money, and that's for a different show. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but so and like Chris said, people can get this and start going through it. Use this reference in several videos and blog posts to, like, if you're looking at this data and you're like, I feel like I'm missing something and I can't interpret it, there's free resources out there. You can go look at
Absolutely.
videos and tech segments.
And just getting used to looking at it is a good idea. So I never stop telling people, look, you need to be looking at this kind of stuff and get used to what it feels like and what it looks like. Just like somebody spotting skin cancer. You see it, you'll get used to spotting it, and you'll go, oh, that's bad. And parsley, no, that's probably okay, because parsley's like a porn site where it's like a vegetable porn site.
It's parsley. I'm telling you, it's a garnish, not a vegetable.
Hey, so I got a quick question.
Gotcha.
This is totally insider knowledge question, right? Because obviously I work at Black Hills, but so Chris. When you have customers come to you and say, well, look, I really want a real-time view of the data, and you're giving me kind of a post-analysis sort of viewpoint here, how do you respond to that question?
Well, so it depends on whether they're asking me that question now or a couple of months from now. The answer now is we need 24 hours worth of data, and it takes a long time to process through that data. If you can try and do this in real time. You can try and look at snippets, but again, we're talking beacon activity. So if we have an internal system that's beaconing only once an hour, and I'm only looking at like an hour or two's worth of data and that's it, I'm never going to pick up that beacon. If I'm looking at 24 hours, now I got a large enough data set to be able to consume that. So it is, yes, it is kind of that next day thing where you're catching this. But then again, if you kind of look at the stats, we're still in that range where most folks aren't catching their compromised system on their network till a minimum of 90 days. It's usually closer to 6 months still. If you're catching in 24 hours versus 6 months, that's a huge improvement in performance.
Absolutely, and that's the response I've given in the past as well. And to be honest, those of us in the information security community, we all know that the best analysis is actually a post analysis anyway, so I think that's an appropriate response. But I'm pretty sure you've still got customers that are coming at you looking for a real time response. And so, what does a future roadmap hold with respect to kind of feeding that need?
So my engineering team has told me no, it can't be done. So I said I want 2 hours, and they said no, it can't be done. And I said, no, I want a maximum of a 2-hour delay. And they said, okay, we'll look at it. And they started coming back and saying, oh, we could make a tweak here. Oh, look, we could make a tweak there. Oh, look, we could upgrade this. We could do that. I honestly feel like we'll be able to get RITA to a point where it's a maximum of 2 hours behind on data. And that's mostly because just the way we're consuming Bro right now, probably by the end of the year. So figure by December, we'll be able to go from like a 24-hour window to a 2-hour window. And then we're going to start, of course, so Paul knows me. So, they'll give me 2 hours and they'll be all excited. And I'll say, hey, that's great. I need an hour. And then, there'll be sadness that ensues. And then they'll turn around and they'll do it because, oh, my God, we got a dojo full of ninjas working on this stuff.
Right. And I know most of those people. I've worked with them. So
yes,
you're absolutely right. There's some really, really bright people working on this stuff. And it's also, I think, important to preface this with the fact that I'm asking you difficult questions. There's absolutely no doubt that, the 12, 24 hours or even more window of data is going to be more accurate in terms of its analysis without any doubt at all.
So actually, if they do it the way I want, which, I always get my way, right?
It sounds like they will.
If they do it the way I want, what I want is 2-hour windows that are constantly being consumed. So in other words, yes, you can get data 2 hours later, but you're looking at the previous 24 hours. And then, there'll be new data 2 hours after that, but again, you're looking at the previous 24 hours.
Okay,
so it'll be a rolling 24-hour window as opposed to a smaller chunk, which would be the cheating way to go about making this faster.
So is it if I understand that correctly, Chris, is it right to say that you're looking for almost an incremental update to the prior result?
No, I want everything. Oh God, I want it all, dude. So that's like part of it, but there's lots of other stuff going on that I had people make me promise I won't promise yet because I'm just really excited about some of the things that we're going to be pulling in on here. I'm hoping Southwest Hackenfest we'll have this stuff ready to go by then. But again, it's open source software. This is kind of the free stuff we do on the side. Please
Chris,
I think a break if we run a few weeks beyond that. So,
Chris, I think you meant Wild West Hackin' Fest.
Yeah, I think
Wild West Hackin' Fest. Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries. Thought they
Which
changed
we'll
the venue.
all see you there, by the way. So.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. That'll be awesome.
No, that's fantastic, Chris. And if people want to get RITA, I'll put the links in the show notes, Chris, to your slides, some blog posts, and the link to download RITA will be on wiki.securityweekly.com. This is episode 574. Awesome. You can also go to, is it activecountermeasures.com/PSW? Hold on, let me just verify that. I think it is. Hold on,
I'm going to pretend you didn't ask me that, Paul, but yes, it is.
Okay, yeah, I was the one that came up with the URL. Yeah, so it's active. I just wanted to double check. activecountermeasures.com/PSW is where you can go learn more. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge.
Oh, dude, happy to. Anytime.
And with that, we will take a short break. Come back with the security news for this week. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.